My pleasure to introduce Dr. Samuel Meisels, the founding executive director of the Buffett Institute. And he's going to lead and moderate a panel of 5 of our wonderful commission members to delve into a little bit some of these goals and recommendations and what this means for them and what it means for our state. Sam and commission members, if you'd come up, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Susan. That was a wonderful presentation. And while my colleagues are finding their places here, I just want to say a few words that are off script. I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank Susan Fritz for being here. Susan is the former interim president of the University of Nebraska system and the provost and senior executive officer of the university. And it's a great pleasure always to work with her. John Stinner has been an amazing source of knowledge for us. John said to us about a year ago, I need to know the number. I need to know how much money is going into early care and education in this state and how much we need to do this in a quality way. What's the gap? And that's what you will see in the report. I want to thank Matt Bloomstead, Commissioner of Education, members of the State Board of Education who are here with us, our wonderful staff at the Institute, Marjorie Kostelnik, my partner in co-chairing this, and really all of you and the early childhood workforce. We are dedicated to doing this right. And today is one of many steps. This isn't the first step. You got us here. Now let's work together to go further. I have a wonderful panel of commission members. And let me tell you that the commission members, their signatures, as it were, are all over this report. If, as an academic, I were to write this report, would have written this report starting 3 years ago, it never would have looked like it looks today. It's much better because of their participation and the participation of the other commission members who you saw standing earlier. So their names are in the program. I'm going to introduce each briefly as I ask them a question. I'm going to kind of try to be sort of like Judy Woodruff, if you watch that show, Anderson Cooper. I'm not sure I'm into the Fox thing, you know, and I don't think we have anybody here who says no, who says early childhood no, you know, so we're all, you know, very, very strongly supportive, but we have different opinions, and so I'm not going to go in any kind of alphabetical order or anything else, but just the way I'd like to raise some questions here. And I've invited them to add to each other's points of view and to object if that seems right. And we're all friends and we're used to objecting. Kathy Lang, you are the state director. You are the state director of the Nebraska Business Development Center at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and formerly served as the director of the Nebraska Department of Economic Development and the Nebraska Commissioner of Labor. You were also the Nebraska Property Tax Administrator. We won't talk about that too much. And the Deputy Tax Commissioner. Why did you agree to serve on this commission? And what did you think you could contribute to it?
You asked me.
I did.
I, based on our conversation, saw this as vital for Nebraska's future. But my passion and interest is because of my past. I was a working parent, and we relied so much on our children's care provider, people like Mariah, and how hard our child care provider worked to provide care to our children, and how important it was for us to have in-home care. I was a very strong advocate of in-home care. And from my workforce and education perspective, how important it is to assure that we support high quality care, which, as has been said, all of this work is based on science, and that is foundational to this report. And then from the business and economic perspective, it really is about the big picture. All child care is a business. And every single day, people across our state are opening the doors in their homes and in their centers, and it's a business. And the Nebraska Business Development Center is here to support them. Parents are seeking care, and the child care talent, because it is a talent, and within the talent is workforce and business owners, we want to see that there is proper compensation for the very important work that we do. And that's what brought me to this commission.
Thank you. So I don't have enough time for applause. They all deserve applause. Later, okay? I'll tell you when. All right. Mariah Stowe, you operate a private family child care home in Lincoln, serving 12 children. Your home-based child care business serves families with children from 4 months to 4 years. Why did you join the commission? And can you help us understand who is in the early childhood workforce? Who is included in this?
So when I was first approached to join the commission, I thought it sounded really interesting. I had no idea what I was getting into. But yeah, it's been really great. I like being able to bring that side to the field of when we're sitting at the table, that I can talk directly to working with the children, and that every day that's what I do. So I can bring that to people who care about the workforce and care about the children, but haven't directly worked with them maybe that recently. When we talk about who's in the workforce, it's a very broad range. We have the family child care providers, we have assistants who work in family child care and in centers, we have centers, we have the coaches who come and work with programs to help them have higher quality, and we have home visitors who come to families. Then there's a wide range, and I think the importance of what we outline is just we want parents to have a choice, and that they at least have the option for high quality care if they, in whatever setting that they choose.
Thank you, Mariah. Nancy Edick, you've been on the faculty of the UNO College of Education since 1993, when you were 14, I think, right? Something, not quite. And Dean of the college since 2009. You hold both a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education, you were a teacher, and a Master of Science in Supervision and Administration from UNO, and a doctoral degree in Educational Administration and Supervision from the joint program at UNO-UNL. Given your background, can you tell us why we should devote so much attention to the early childhood workforce at this time?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And of course, the commission's been a learning journey for me too, because I did not have the level of expertise in early childhood that Mariah does, for example. So participating in this at the higher education level, we have 16 different educator preparation institutions in the state that lead to the opportunities for a bachelor's degree and beyond that. But in addition to that, we have tremendous partnerships with our community colleges. We have partnerships with NDE that provides ongoing professional development opportunities. We have a whole network of support from First Five Nebraska to Sixpence that you've heard about. So we have this whole connection of opportunities around advancing and moving forward with early childhood, high quality preparation. So it's a tremendous opportunity. And this report and this commission has helped us create a roadmap, ways to connect those things so that there are efficiencies and so there are more opportunities to really build a strong, highly qualified workforce, even though they may come at it from different angles, from different experiences, from different levels of formal preparation. But there's lots of expertise across all the spectrum. And so this helps us weave that together and move things together in the right direction on behalf of the quality.
Very good, thank you. Tawana Grover, you are the superintendent of the Grand Island Public Schools, and previously you were with the DeSoto Independent School District in DeSoto, Texas. Just last year, you were named to the prestigious Broad Academy, a professional development program comprised of aspiring urban and state superintendents, as well as leaders already running high-performing public school systems. Dr. Grover, isn't Nebraska's early childhood workforce already qualified? Don't we have competencies already for our kids? What problems are we trying to solve?
Wow, I think that was one of the, I guess maybe the call to action to be a part of the work of the commission. And yes, we do have very qualified, caring individuals that are working with our students on a daily basis. I think the challenge for us is really just closing that knowing and doing gap. So we know what we need to do for our students, but when you have a mixed delivery method, there are so many different ways that our students can receive, whether it's in-home care or center-based, and depending on who you work for and where you work, those qualifications, they differ. And I think what the commission has done has really put in front of us, how do we create coherence so that every student, regardless of their zip code, regardless of where they are, every student has the opportunity to have that high quality instruction. And so the Department of Education, they adopted the competencies. So they're out there for us, just even last year. And it really takes us, it just combines that the heart and warmth of relationships that we want to give to our students, but it really puts out to us what our educators, our providers, what they should know, understand, and be able to do for our most vulnerable students. And so, yes, hashtag the early years matter.
Okay, thank you. John Spatz, as the executive director of the Nebraska Association of School Boards, you've led this organization with more than 240 members since 2012. You're a Nebraskan through and through, born and raised here with a bachelor's in JD from UNL. Tell us about the cost of implementing the commission's recommendations. Can we afford this?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for it?
Great question. And Sam, thanks you for inviting me. And I really want to say, I appreciate being a part of something like this on behalf of school board members. I don't know if 10 years ago it would have been obvious to include school board members. And I think I represent 1,700 elected community leaders statewide. And the understanding that we have about early childhood is better today than it's ever been. And I compliment the Buffett Early Childhood Organization, the other commission members, and many of the people in this room for our understanding. And the question that I have isn't how are we going to afford it, but how can we can't afford not to do it. And my office is in South Lincoln, on just north of Highway 2 on 13th Street. And across the street from us is the state pen. And there's a big billboard right now out front of the state pen said there is a $10,000 hiring bonus for corrections workers right now. And Senator Stinner alluded to this about our overcrowding. And what I've been saying for a while now is that the main problem we have as it relates to economics and funding and property taxes is that the narrative is failing all of us. And the narrative from the state says, well, our taxes are too high because we spend too much, or we need to run government more like a business. And that narrative is failing everybody, and that's urban and rural, Republicans and Democrats, in my world, equalized and non-equalized. So when we talk about issues like property taxes, as opposed to saying, how do we lower spending? I'm going to copy something Susan said. How do we invest in areas where there is a rate of return? And common sense will tell you this, but also the data will tell you this, that the highest rate of return for investments in governments and political subdivisions is in early childhood. So if we do run the state like a business, if that's what we're looking at, our product is the people. And a business is going to say, how do we prioritize in areas where there's a higher rate of return? That's early childhood. Everybody wins when we invest in early childhood. And By changing that narrative, I feel it, I see it out in the field. People are getting it more now. Changing that narrative is going to be beneficial for all of us.
Thank you. So, I've worried sometimes. Recently, my wife and I walked into Target. We saw this huge sign said $13 an hour, and I want all the early childhood people not to look at the sign, right? Because I never thought we were going to lose anybody to the state penitentiary system. I still don't. Mariah, let's talk about the kind of qualifications that are needed to care for young children, because people just don't get it. Do those caring for babies need to be as skilled as or educated as those teaching older children? Is infant care more than feeding, changing, and napping? Is it just as complex as educating a third grader?
So yeah, I think when we think about infants, it can be just instinct to think, oh, well, they eat, they sleep, you got to change their diapers sometimes, and that's it. But when you look at that from being a teacher who's caring for more than one infant at a time, sometimes these people enter the workforce and they don't have any infant-specific training. And so what happens then is that they go into it and here they are caring for these babies and they don't know how to support breastfeeding, or they don't know how to respect the infant's cues. We learned, like Marjorie talked about, brain development is huge. There are gaps in their brains that we know through positive relationships and interactions, they will grow and build, and those first years are going to affect how they are in the later years and as they get older. So if we don't have an educated workforce caring for those children at that age, then they may not be prepared and ready for entering school in those later years. And so that's where it's just, I like how Susan worded it. It's a different skill set that you need to care for infants than the older years, but it is still just as complex and just as needed.
And just as exhausting.
It is.
Maybe even more so.
Yeah,
Any
a little
infant
bit.
caregivers here knows that. Let's
Sam,
think.
Can I add
Yeah, so
something to that?
please.
Because the other thing that these early childhood educators do is provide parents with information that we as parents may not have because a book didn't come with that baby when we brought them home. So
And
they
that's
educate
something
us.
that, I often have parents that will come to me, when a child's sick, well, what about Pedialyte? I've heard about Pedialyte. Do you know what we should do with that? And so because they see me every day, they can come to me with those questions. And sometimes I do refer them to their pediatrician because it's just not a question I'm educated to answer. But I can refer them to, that would be a good question to ask your pediatrician, or in my experience, here's what happens. And then they go home and they have stronger connections with their children because they're awakened when you tell a parent of an 8-month-old that, notice how when you lean them backwards, they start to tip their head back too, because they want to control it. They want to be in charge too. And you just see the parents' eyes light up that, like, my baby is doing stuff and it's not just laying there. And, it gets them excited, and then they continue to build those positive interactions, not just at the program, but also at home with
You make us all want to have our kids in your program. Don't forget that the Mariah has children, I mentioned, from 4 months to 4 years. She could have them through 6 years of age.
Up to kindergarten.
And she is up to kindergarten, and she's able to handle children in that entire age span. And that is a huge amount to know. So we talk actually about early childhood as birth through 8. That is the period of early childhood, through basically through the end of 3rd grade. Let me turn to Tawana and say, why should public schools care about infants, toddlers, preschoolers? In Nebraska, schools are only mandated to educate children from kindergarten age up, right? Matt, isn't that correct? Something that, and all of my friends on the board who are here, we talk about that all the time.
Wow, I think it kind of goes back to when you talked about the brain development. And so those early years are so critical. We find ourselves oftentimes having to think about, how do we close the achievement gap? How do we help support the mental health issues or just the social emotional learning? And many of those skills they're able to learn through early childhood education. And often people, they want us to think about our graduates. So I just want to get to the other end, of the spectrum. So we are expected to graduate students who can help create jobs, who can attract jobs, who can fill jobs. And I think that we cannot ignore the foundational facts that when we look at the students who graduate from high school, the students who are more likely to go on to college, the higher earning, it all starts back at early childhood education. And that has to be part of the conversation, that we cannot expect for students to enter high school without a solid early childhood education. That's why for us, it's the #1 goal of our strategic plan is early childhood education. That's how we get to students who thrive.
Thank you. Both John and Nancy, I'll bet, have a lot to say about this, because you both are looking at this entire continuum, not just at the early childhood years, but across those years. So do you want to respond to Tawana on that?
Yeah, well, and I think we have a real opportunity, because just as Marjorie said, we've discovered so much about the importance of early development in the last decade. And we also have a new generation that is coming into the workforce that has that context to work from. So they're excited and they value this idea of working with young children. So we have the interest that's there, but we have to make sure that if this is the field they choose to go into, that they have appropriate compensation to be able to choose a field that they're very interested in. Right now, our early childhood program is the fastest growing program in teacher education.
So how does that happen? How does that happen if they know how much their salary will likely be after they leave?
I'm not sure they know. I mean, seriously, because they know how important
Now
it
they
is.
know.
Yeah, and that's an important part of the commission's work. They know and understand and they embrace how important the work is. And they're willing to take on this journey. Young people are, they're idealistic and they believe in the future. And they're willing to invest in that. But boy, we've got to meet them part way, and we have to do something about the compensation. And the vast difference between the public school systems and the centers, which Susan pointed out, double. It's 100% difference in the salary. That's just wrong. And especially when we have center leaders like Mariah that deserve that level of compensation. And she's taking an interesting journey to her credentialing as a bachelor's degree too, which I think points to another important piece about making sure we offer alternative pathways for those young people who have this ambition and this desire to get there.
So it's interesting that you say you're not sure that they know, but that's every single one of us. And I include myself because I started off as a preschool, kindergarten, first grade teacher too. Every single one of us started off not looking at how much money we're going to make, but looking at those children's faces. That's what drew us. That's what kept us. That's what keeps us still now. John?
Yeah, and I would, regarding the school's involvement in this, every fall we travel around the state at our area membership meetings where we meet with school board members and superintendents. And every year we ask them a question, try to get feedback and data. And a lot of times it deals with, well, how do you cut spending and how do you, manage your budgets and things. This year we threw a loop, we kind of threw a wrench at them. We said, if you had funding available, what would you use it on? And the #1 issue, not surprisingly, was facilities, and that's going to be there for a while. The #2 area was early childhood. Over 30% of the school board members and superintendents around the state have recognized the importance of early childhood.
Has that changed in recent years?
I think so, and I think 5 years ago it wouldn't have registered. I think it's a credit to you and the people in this room of communicating the importance of it, understanding the brain science behind all of that. So one of the things we ask school board members say is, what does a healthy, successful graduate from your district look like? Once you see that and work backward and say, what are the barriers to getting there, and then what are the things that are going to help propel people to get there? What's a bigger barrier if you don't have high quality, accessible early childhood in your community? And so traditionally we said to school boards, there's 3 things you have to do. You got to do budget, you got to do policy, and you got to hire, fire, and evaluate the superintendent. We're saying there really needs to be a 4th area, and that is that role of a community leader. And if you identify as a district, just like in Grand Island, as a strategic plan saying early childhood is important, how do you engage the business community? How do you engage the early childhood professionals around this issue? And I'm really excited to see how the schools can engage in this more directly.
Let me turn to Kathy, especially in regard to that community engagement and the relationship. What do we know about the relationship between availability of childcare and economic vitality in small communities, and actually in any community in this state and other states?
We know a lot about it, and I want to give a shout out. Casey Balitz is here today, and Casey wrote an article that appeared in the Columbus paper yesterday. And what Casey addressed in his article goes to this question. It is correct that numbers of years ago, if you talked about economic development, you were isolated within a conversation about business, business development, business attraction. If you were engaged in a conversation about community development, Casey referred to them as the touchy-feely side of development, but you were engaged in what's going on in your community, how do you make your community great, and sort of in the middle of all this was workforce. Workforce existed as an issue for a very long time, but as it as it coalesced as one of the most important issues that we're facing, workforce development, the three began to triangulate. And as we are fond to say at the Nebraska Business Development Center, supporting the development of wonderful small businesses across our state, they cannot be successful if we don't have strong, vibrant communities. And strong, vibrant communities cannot exist if it doesn't have high-quality childcare. Senator Stinner told us a story before coming in here that as he would interview young people for his bank, they wanted to know first and foremost, what's my job, what's my salary? Then they wanted to know what's going on in this community, why do I want to be here? And then their next question was, is there quality childcare in this community? So it is vitally important to the future economic success of our state. Being the best place to be a child is going to be vitally important for Nebraska.
And this is something that is very, very important in this group. We have people who have started high-quality childcare from the ground up, as in Red Cloud. And we have the Nebraska Children Family Foundation that's working with maybe 24 communities by now on trying to help them to find ways to provide exactly what Kathy has just described. And we have many more stories. These are stories that we want to collect over the coming years, and we want people to know about it because we can all learn so much from it. But wait, I'm being Judy Woodruff here, although not nearly as pretty as you. And I have breaking news. Although it would be in my ear, right? She wouldn't know. Hey, everybody, we're trending in Nebraska. Hashtag early years matter. It's working. Keep tweeting. All right? Never say I didn't say tweet. All right. We're sort of talking about business, so let me turn back to Mariah and ask Mariah, you're a professional businesswoman and an early childhood educator with specialized skills and knowledge. Help us understand what in-home childcare providers need to know in order to run a successful childcare business. I believe that in-home childcare gets a bad rap, and they need to hear something from you about what you really do.
Yeah, so I think we often get overlooked as being a business, that, it's fairly easy to just apply for a license and suddenly you're a business. And there's not like a training or anything beforehand. We aren't referred to the Business Development Center often to have anybody that talks to us about the business side of things. I was lucky enough to be working on my associate's degree, and I was able to take an administration class through the SEC program here in Lincoln that helped me prepare for staffing. And you have to be able to have students, so you need to be able to talk with families, you need to be able to get word out there, but you also have to know record keeping, and you have to have all of that knowledge in addition to caring for children. But while caring for children is important, you also need to know how to run a successful business. otherwise you're not going to be able to care for the children. So there's, I mean, when you look at just the complexity of owning a business, there's a whole range of skills that just can sometimes, I think, be overlooked, unfortunately, in family child care, just because there's not a lot of trainings out there that are offered for it, and they're not always required as early as maybe they should be, so that these people can have even the chance to run a successful business and be given opportunities so that they're not set up to fail.
Great. So, and one of the concerns that we on the commission have had is that a report of the kind that we are sharing here, and we're going to share nationally. Monday I was in New York City talking to 100 people there about what we're doing here, and they were pretty amazed because no other state in the nation has a proposal as comprehensive as we do here. But some people may start to think, well, they may be put out of business because of the kinds of recommendations that are here. So, John, let me ask you to think a little out loud. Will private home child care and for-profit centers go out of business because of the commission's goals? Does this report recommend free pre-K for all?
No, and honestly, I think what's going to happen here is the more people understand the value of high-quality early childhood, as people begin to understand the importance of that brain science and brain development earlier on, I think what we're going to see is increased demand. And as that demand increases, we need a plan to meet that demand all across the state of Nebraska, in urban and rural places all across the state of Nebraska. So I agree with what you said. This is exciting to have a comprehensive plan like this, because oftentimes when we're trying to solve problems in the state of Nebraska, there's a lot of good things going on all over the places, and that's true in early childhood, but to have a vision that we can all point to really is exciting. And I think as the demand will increase, which I think it will, there's got to be a plan for meeting that. So this gives us a chance to do that.
Yes, Nancy?
Well, and I think an important point about the report is choice is throughout the report. And choice is so important when it comes to early care. The quote about the provider who tends to know about pregnancies before other members of the family points to that. You really are a part of the family. And so for those people who want in-home care that is a partnership in almost being a part of the family of raising the child, we don't ever want to take that choice away, and the report makes that clear. What we want to do is provide lots of opportunities for quality enhancements and financial incentives to be able to maintain that in-home care. We have tremendous diversity throughout the state of Nebraska. We know that over 30% of young children are children of color. We need to make sure that we're accommodating that diverse population, and by offering choice, viable, high-quality choice, we can help address that issue around the diversity of the workforce.
Looking out into the audience here, I see a couple of people, and I'm sure I'm missing some because I have a lot of lights in my eyes, who are school superintendents. Mark Adler, I know, is here from Ralston, and I think Cheryl Logan from OPS is here. There are probably other superintendents too. Tawana, can you talk to your colleagues a little bit about this? After all, we know that, like as in many other states, the education system in Nebraska is already under financial stress. Can we afford to expand childcare before we fix or take care of all the other K-12 issues that we face? How can we make room for more investment?
I mean, I think it goes back to the earlier quote that we can't afford not to invest. As we talked about, the earlier years are so important to the work that we do. And so I don't think we as superintendents want to be put in a position to choose. Are you asking me to choose between college readiness and choose between early childhood education? We're saying that they're both fundamentally important to the work that we do. And a lot of it, the commission, the work there, it has inspired such a spirit of collaboration among our communities. And I think when we get people in the room and just having that greater appreciation to how we work with our community partners and utilizing this report to see how can we leverage our resources, how can we coordinate our efforts so that together that we can reach all students, all children, all babies.
Kathy, can you add to that because of the perspective you have on communities that surround these schools?
As I came on this commission and being a strong advocate for in-home care, I wouldn't have stayed on the commission if I thought that we were moving in a direction of somehow eliminating such a vital opportunity in our state. I have been very, very proud to observe, as all of us have worked together on this, the recognition of how important it is that the parent, the family with their child gets to choose where their child is in these early years, gets to choose the environment where they are. The other thing, and it's been said again, but I think it bears repeating, as we move to action, how do we make sure that those individuals, those small business owners who are starting at about probably 6 o'clock in the morning until about maybe even 7 o'clock at night, caring for children in their home, also have access to the training and education opportunities that maybe their peers in a center can more easily access. So we've got to think about delivering these education opportunities so that all providers have that opportunity to be exposed to understanding the science and the knowledge and the development of a child along the way.
Nancy, can you add to that as the Dean of a College of Education?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for additional partnerships to address those kinds of things. And again, some of the suggestions and the recommendation in the report talk to those opportunities, creating partnerships and pathways between the different entities.
Right, and using what we have already and trying to link them together instead of building something new.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the big questions that I expect people to ask is, how are you going to pay for this? I mean, that's a lot of money, right? Although, as Susan pointed out, it is 3/4 for full funding, and full funding isn't just better pay. Full funding is the entire shooting match. It's facilities, it's preparation, it's it certainly is also wages and many other parts of this. That costs 1/4% of the gross domestic product of the state of Nebraska. Now, needless to say, the gross domestic product of the state of Nebraska is not in a bank account anywhere where we can withdraw that much money. But it also is clear that we're not looking to Governor Ricketts and his successors to pay that bill alone. So, John, you've done a lot of thinking about cost and in schools and also in early childhood. Talk about that. How do you answer the person who says, we can't afford this?
Yeah, great question. I think we've been guilty for a long time. When there's an issue, we go to the legislature. Well, how do you fix this? And I certainly wouldn't say the legislature or the state government isn't a part of the solution, but the solution's in this room. The solution's going to be those communities coming together around a vision for what that community is going to look like over the next 20 years. And we have to be proactive. We've got to engage the business community a little bit differently. And go back to what I talked about earlier, that narrative of saying, if you're a taxpayer in the state of Nebraska, if you're a taxpayer in a local community, where do you want money to be invested? Where's the highest rate of return for that investment? And how do you collaborate collectively in a community to do that? Now, again, Senator Stinner and the folks at the legislature will be a part of this, hopefully, to some degree. But the solution is in this room. The solution is in your communities.
Let me throw this out to any of you here, and that is, if these recommendations are implemented, let's look ahead. We have a long horizon. We're saying over the next 10 years, these are the things that we want to do. You know, I came here saying we're going to make Nebraska the best place in the nation to be a baby. Well, it takes a little while, and we've only just got started, and we're working with all of you who've been doing that for a long time already. What will change? How will things look different in 10 years? Anybody?
So as I thought about this report, it is big, it is audacious, it is visionary, and it sets a guiding light 10 years out. And here we are today, and I think about what we have in our child care provider environment, all the different kinds of care, what we have going on in the K-12 system, and then the continuing developed science to help guide us and keep us honest about why we're doing all this. And it feels like a great big triangle to me. So we have so much diversity and opportunity and ideas and people here, and we're driving to this particular point 10 years out. Everything will happen with a step. And to the point John just said, it's going to happen in a community and it's going to happen with people. And so what's so exciting is what happens after the launch, and I love that word launch. It's not a report on a shelf. And how do we take that and really understand it and then begin to take steps one at a time towards that point in the future? And the science guiding us all the way along.
Right. And Sam, if you'll let me, if you've heard me talk over the last few years, I use a 20-year chart. So I might step out to 20 years.
We're compressing that, 10 years.
Well, the last several years, we do the 20-year chart in Nebraska, and we look at, as a percentage of the state budget, what are the items that are growing as a percentage? And the chart that we use shows corrections going up, Medicaid going up, juvenile justice going up. What's going down as a percentage? Higher ed and K-12. So purely from a business model, you see your expenses going up and your investments going down year after year. That's not sustainable. So these community-based solutions, I would anticipate that leveling out, and at some point, what if 20 years from now, as a percentage of the state budget, the things increasing were the investments? The things increasing were K-12 or higher education, early childhood. And the things we don't want to spend money on, the expenses, are going down as a percentage of the state budget. I've said for a while, how do we make people ineligible for corrections and Medicaid, meaning they're not committing crimes and they have a job with health insurance? That should be the goal.
Yeah. You know, as a higher education representative here, one of the things I think about is providing opportunities and pathways for more people that are in this early childhood space to receive degrees, bachelor's degrees, advanced degrees, because the reality is compensation is tied to qualifications all the way across the board. So having opportunities for more early childhood providers to advance in their credentials that warrant the salaries that are deserved. That happens through scholarship opportunities. It happens through articulation agreements between different entities that create seamless pathways to achieving those goals. It's adding prestige and uplifting the profession. All of those things merge together. So from a higher ed perspective, I hope to see better pathways, better compensation, more incentives, so that those people that are interested know they're going into a well-paid profession.
Tawana, do you see a role for the highly experienced early childhood professional who doesn't have a degree? I don't disagree with Nancy, but I want to broaden it. Are we able to articulate and define competencies and then find a way of evaluating them so that those people who are really excellent and are not degreed and maybe can't find the time or the money or even the interest in getting a degree still can have a major role here? Is that possible?
The short answer is absolutely. Because if you think about the competencies, right, we're saying what you know, what you understand, what you're able to do, the knowledge and skills. How are you interacting with students, with children on a daily basis? And so we're able to observe that by going out into the centers, you know, and I think that by the number of people that are in this room today and the hundreds of people that are watching online in this very comprehensive report that we have. It shows us what our current state is right now, and it gives us that vision to how, we will look in the future. I have to believe that we have an opportunity to preserve our communities as well as grow our state. And it's going to take all of us, and we cannot discount. And I think for me, that's been one of the most eye-opening parts of this process, is that we are not isolated from our home care providers, from our center providers. We have to lock arms, and there are enough people in this room that can think of beyond a degree, right? We can think beyond that to our service delivery model of how we are guaranteeing that, yes, Nebraska is the best place to be a baby.
Thank you. Let me just, we're going to have a few minutes to do something that my staff will wonder why I'm doing, which is inviting all of you to ask a couple questions, because we have a few more minutes, and we didn't prepare that, but that's going to be fine, because I know you'll play along. But let me just ask one more question to the panel as a whole, and that is, how has being a member of the commission changed how you think about the early childhood workforce? Let's start with you, Mariah.
I think for me as an educator, being on the commission showed me that my voice mattered, that, people were listening, and that when you can come to the table and bring these issues up, that there are people that do care. It's not, I think sometimes there's like an us versus them mentality, and it was not that at all. From the commission and going on through the commission to other organizations, I have always been met with very welcome arms, and people want to hear the voice of those working in the field. And so that was one of the big things, that with the commission, I felt that my voice was heard, and that it mattered, that what the people who were in the trenches were doing.
Kathy is more of a consumer than a professional in this field. How has this changed your view of the workforce?
So in part, it confirmed my view of how I felt about early childhood care and education and quality. But what it also did is it has allowed me to strengthen my voice in this regard, particularly to the clients that we serve at the Nebraska Business Development Center, about how important it is to support the development of childcare, high quality childcare. So our consultants across Nebraska who work with business owners to start and grow their childcare business are armed with information about quality. And that had never happened before because it wasn't available. And so this changes for us how we talk with our clients who are starting and growing childcare business across Nebraska.
And John, as a person who interacts with thousands of elected school board members, that's a tough one. How has it affected you?
Well, I want to echo something Kathy said, and I kind of came to this also as a consumer. My youngest child just turned 5 and started kindergarten this year. And so at one point I had 3 kids in daycare, and I knew the expense, but I also knew that they weren't getting rich off of this. And throughout all of that time, I was always worried we were going to lose the preschool teacher or the daycare providers that became really a big part of our lives. And, excuse me. And one of the things I learned is really how passionate they are about the profession. It's not simply about the money. And I think I've learned how we, as an organization, as 1,700 elected community leaders, can better advocate for that profession.
Tawana, as a school administrator, where does this fit in your thinking as far as the early childhood workforce goes?
From the district perspective, I think it really allows us to utilize our influence, our reach out into our community to help continue to educate people on the importance of early childhood education. And through the work of the commission, I think I'll walk away just knowing that we cannot ignore the investment. The return on investment is just too high. We cannot ignore it.
And Nancy, in higher ed, where does this fit? Because you have such a wide range of responsibilities, from instruction to research to community engagement.
Well, one, I think that being a part of the commission has given me a network that has helped my career tremendously, but it's been able to help me connect faculty that are in the early childhood area to other people across the state. You know, we're in Omaha, and this has certainly given me a broader vision and a better understanding of the entire context across the state of Nebraska, and that this is something that we all need to work really hard and do it collaboratively and not competitively as we work together. So I've also had the opportunity to do a lot of hiring during I'm in my 11th year as dean, and we have made a very intentional focus on early childhood, which historically wasn't something that we had done as a college. So it's changed me and my priorities, and they've certainly become more focused on early childhood.
And let me point out that Nancy is the dean of one of the 3 colleges of education at the University of Nebraska, and the other deans also participated, and I think are here today. Grace Mims from UNK, Sherry Jones, who's the current dean at UNL, and Beth Dahl, who was the interim dean for several years between Marjorie and Sherry, and we're very grateful. So you can look in your programs and you see the list of commissioners and the diversity that we learn from. So here's what I'd like to do, Aaron, without having given you any warning, but we're ready for it. I see my colleagues are ready for it. We have some microphones. We have a few minutes left, another 10 or so, or even a little longer. Questions from you? Right down here. Can we take a question from our state board member? Lisa? There you go.
This is all amazing. When you mentioned that it's a small business, the federal government used to give small business money, startup. Is that available for this type of situation, small business?
There are many services that are provided to help individuals start and grow small business. Nebraska Business Development Center is only one. The resources available to directly assist with that are probably more in the area of loans, like the Small Business Administration. And so there are opportunities to be able to get those kind of resources. I would have to say right now, to my knowledge, I am not sure of any direct grants that would go to this, but my guess is within a community, there's a way to look at perhaps USDA rural development grants that could come and help support the development of high-quality child care in a community. So yes, there may be some of those resources.
I walked past Representative Fortenberry's office on the way downstairs here. Maybe we ought to pay a visit on the way out. Another question. I can't see you very well because of the lights. Over there. And will you give us your name and where you're from?
Hi, David Rogers from Fremont, Nebraska. I want to direct a question to both John and to Tawana. I agree with you. The solution is in the community to choose the areas to invest. My question is, how do we have metrics, or Tawana talked about ROI, return on investment. How do we measure that and see what types of investments that we're doing are going to be the most effective to bring about the greatest return on investment?
Well, I think there's a number of ways to do that. There's a lot of data out there that shows for every dollar invested in early childhood, there's a higher rate of return there than anywhere else. But there's a number of things, and Senator Sinner talked about that. As a district, if you're going to make early childhood a priority, I would anticipate your 3rd grade reading scores are going to go up. There's a number of metrics that we need to utilize, because if it is important and we believe it's important, we think the data is going to show that. So there's a number of metrics that you can use over a period of time: reading scores, test scores, parent engagement, community engagement, graduation rates, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I would believe statewide, you're going to see economic numbers get better too. As people become more employable over a period of time, I think you're going to see a broadening of the economic base, which everybody wins under that.
Tawana?
I think John covered it.
Okay. And let me add that this is a challenge for us in the field academically as well. How to evaluate competencies. We know what they are. We know how to write them. We know how to read them. We even know how to do them. But how do we evaluate them on what kind of set of criteria? And that's still work to be done.
And let me also, it is tough, you're right. And Sam and I were in a meeting once with somebody who said, how do we see results in 2 years? And it's like, well, there may be some, but this is a long-term issue. And I think one of the problems that we have is we're very reactive as a state government. We react to the circumstances out there. What we've got to do is be more proactive, and it's not a 1-year vision, it's not a 2-year vision. This is a 10-year, 20-year vision that we're trying to create here. So measuring that is going to be very important.
Superintendent in Gretna.
Oh, it was Kevin Riley, yeah. He
The 2-year
recently
thing just
retired.
brought to mind something Kevin Riley said to me. He was just formerly for many years, wonderful superintendent in Gretna, Nebraska. And when we started working, the Institute started working with the learning community in Douglas and Sarpy counties, he said to all the other superintendents, this is a 20-year operation. Now, I didn't promise I was going to stick around for 20 years, but it isn't a 2-year operation, that's for sure. We have a question over here, I think.
It's actually a response to the question over there. My name is Cindy Rowell. I'm with the Max and Marjorie Fisher Foundation, and we're doing very similar work in Detroit, and we're just honored to be here today, Kamara and I. The fascinating report, it's really great. We're taking it back. We're going to take a look at how we can do this in our community. But the one thing that we did do and continue to update regularly is a ROI on these investments. We partnered with the Amherst Wilder Foundation in Minnesota. They've developed a formula that they can assess the ROI at a city level, at a county level, and at a state level. And they're happy to work with anyone that's interested in taking a look at that data and developing those metrics for your own community. I'd be happy to share it.
Thank you. Right down here in front.
Hello, my name is Catherine Patton, and I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and I run 2 daycares academy, Revolution of Love Academy. And one of the things that I was thinking, God, I'm here today. I'm stepping out of my little box to say that the things that we do in the community, and then the fear that not only myself and my workers and my parents that we have, based on the school, preschool, and all the things, and meeting the qualifications, and also with the Buffett, they fear, and getting together with the other centers that's in the community and saying, what do we got to do? And as I evaluate what I'm doing with my children, that the power that each one of us have to have in order to move this thing forward. And as I feared, oh my God, Buffett is coming in here and she's doing this and she's doing that. The school is coming here and all the people that is working. But I'm in this community with gang members. I'm in this community with our children that are parents that's in prison. I'm dealing with the parents that's coming in that is freaked out because, they don't know, they don't have the ethics of working and how to build and going back to school because of all the fears. But one of the things that I have been able to do with some of the kiddos that I work with, I have developed a program about true leadership. What is a true leader? And what would you have to do at 7 years old to 13 to build this kingdom, to go stay in the community as well as go get the education, but come back and stop fearing saying, oh, I got to go into the urban areas. I got to live out there, but build your community up. And how do you do this with no money, with fear? And you stand on the foundation that I'm trying to do with the kiddos, and we use the, I'm kind of nervous here because I'm so passionate about what I do and what I have been trying to do. But we use the eagle, we use the lion, and we use the pigeons. And I say, okay, every day before they go to school, because I am the owner, but I'm there, I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the classroom, I'm in the office, I'm this person with this hat. But what I do with these kiddos when I let them off to school, I said, okay, this is what you're going to have to do. You got to have the ears. You have to incline your ears to be able to hear. You got to open your eyes to have the spiritual eyes, because you got to come back to the community. You got to be that parent that you know you don't have that parent, but you got to be that person that, because maybe your mom's been drinking or dad's been drinking, or you in that pain to be able to, and I know I need to get going. But I mean, you know, and I would really like to meet each one of you all so that you could see some of the things that I'm doing in the community and to teaching them how to be world changers.
Thank you.
You understand?
Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. We are here to work with you and to learn from you and not to take from you, not to take away anything.
I know.
Anderson Cooper just noted that we are now #1 on Twitter. earlyyearsmatter.org. Keep tweeting. All right. In back here, yes.
Hi, I'm Corey Quimby. I own Bubbles and Blocks Child Development Center here in town. And one of my questions would be, what does the implementation look like if the funding is all there? Because right now with the child care subsidy, like we've seen, if someone isn't present, you don't get paid. Is it going to be, okay, the centers are making this much more, but they have to meet a requirement of paying their teachers this much? Like, where are those funds being allocated? Because right now, if we want to have a raise for the teachers, if we give $1 to everyone, that money has to come from the parents. So it's money in, money out.
Well, we want that to be different. I don't want to give this lame excuse like, well, we don't know yet, we're going to work on it, we got some time. But in fact, we don't know yet, we have to work on it. It really is not an automatic type of thing. But for example, you're talking about subsidy, talking about Title 20. We need to work. That's just as with small business, we need to work with our federal partners. We need to work with our state partners. We need to work locally. And this is setting us up to work with all of you to do that. No, this isn't a University of Nebraska thing. We've got this, we actually took that name off of the folder that you have here. It says Early Years Matter, because it matters to all of us. I can't promise you, only I promise is we're going to work at that. And sign up. Get your neighbors to sign up. All right, on the website. Over here, is there somebody over here? Is there a microphone over there? Over here? Okay.
My name is Dennis Hansen. Everybody has a different reason. I'm sorry, I don't have a question. I have a comment. If that's okay. But everybody has a different reason for being here. Mine happens to be community development. And more specifically, a town that Sam referenced called Red Cloud. Probably most people think I'm here because Sally drugged me here, but that's not true. I'm here because of that community development. And one of the things that's when Sally gives many tours at the Valley Child Development Center and everywhere else, but one of the things she always says to people is it took a village. And I think what that means for Red Cloud is this commission report here is going to take a state. And I think that the fact that we have such a diverse group here today and all different reasons for coming, that's why this is going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. We have time for maybe one or two more. One over here.
Hi, I'm Katie Krause. I work for Nebraska Extension, but and my comment is as a mother. So a lot of you haven't seen me because I just got back from maternity leave. And I was blessed. I got 13 and a half weeks because it worked over the holidays and I took a lot of vacation time. But my family spends $23,000 a year for our child to be in phenomenal care in Omaha. I was on the wait list before I was pregnant, and I'm the only one of my friends that got a spot that's having babies in 2019, 2020. And I told them if I'm not pregnant by that time, I will pay the monthly rate to hold my spot of $1,100 a month, which is not the cheapest place in town for infant care.
A lot of pressure.
And we were very frustrated as I look at I'm always fascinated by the finance part of this and how we finance it. I've been to DC as an advocate. And even for our family, there's like the child care tax fund. It's $5,000 no matter how many children you have. So I look at, my family is fortunate we can afford to pay for our care. It still is a large burden, but we can make it work. But as we think about opportunities for the middle class families like ourselves and where there might be opportunities for tax incentives or other ways to at least make that burden a little tiny bit smaller.
Absolutely important. All right, I think we're going to end here. This has been, I hope it's been as much fun for you as it's been for us. Thank you very much. But so I'm going to ask my panel to leave the stage, and thank you.